If you've been plugged into the camera gear space or whatever it is you want to call it over the past year and a half or so, you might think that not a single professional on earth uses Fujifilm cameras anymore. In fact, you might think that Fujifilm as a company was just out of business entirely because anybody who'd ever breathed in the direction of a Fujifilm camera was street preaching the gospel about how terrible their cameras are, and if you try to use them for any of your professional work, you're just not to be taken seriously. I've actually made a couple of videos in the past about my Fujifilm cameras and why I love using them, and inevitably I get one or two people in the comments trying to get onto me for using Fujifilm cameras for professional purposes, and that's super annoying. So today I want to take a few minutes of your day to talk about why Fujifilm seems to have fallen out of everybody's good graces a little bit, but why I personally still absolutely love shooting with my misunderstood Fujifilm X-T5. What's up? My name is Walter. I am a photographer and commercial filmmaker based in the southeastern United States. So it seemed like Fujifilm went through kind of a renaissance period where everyone wanted a Fuji camera to add to their kit, either as just like a small and lightweight travel camera or to incorporate it into their professional workflow. From what I could tell, this all kind of started around 2020 when the internet got its grimy little peepers on the X100V, a camera that came out right before the pandemic hit the world. People were losing their minds over this little camera. Minds? Why did I say it like that? People were losing their minds over this little camera, and it finally got more eyeballs on Fujifilm as a whole. We were starting to hear a lot more about what Fuji cameras are actually capable of, and a lot of us had frankly been ignoring them for way too long. Now, me personally, I've been keeping a loose watch on Fuji ever since they released the X-T3 back in 2018. At the time, I had just switched over from Nikon DSLRs to Sony mirrorless because the A7 III was out, and if you did not get the A7 III at the time, you were kind of a dumbass because that camera was crazy good, and I'm sorry, but on paper, way better than the X-T3 in any way. But I thought Fuji had great colors, sweet looking cameras, and just a really fun overall approach to photography and a dedication to serving their particular niche of photographers. After securing my own little X100V, I then picked up this, my own black little X-T5, and I started to build out my lens collection, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Over time, I also grabbed an X Pro 3, sold that X Pro 3, sold my X100V, and bought a second silver X-T5, sold that silver X-T5, bought another X100V, and then I sold that X100V. So if you're following along at home, that's a pretty long and convoluted journey to owning just one Fujifilm camera, and that is this same little black X-T5 that started it all for me. The X-T5 has been with me through a lot over the past couple years, and I actually made a whole 40-minute long video reviewing everything about this camera, specifically from the standpoint of a wedding photographer, but I think a lot of the things that I lay out in that video can apply to anybody using this camera for anything. So if you want to check that out, you can get more of like a big picture of how I feel about the X-T5 specifically. But that should bring you up to speed on my journey with Fujifilm over the past few years, so let's take a quick look at where the company is standing in the court of public opinion. When Fujifilm released the X-T5 and the X-H2 and X-H2S, most everyone was in agreement that it was kind of a marker of how serious Fujifilm was getting about appealing to the more professional photographers. But this kind of turned into a double-edged sword for Fujifilm, however, as over the course of 2024, the company kept releasing firmware updates that progressively made these cameras perform worse, specifically in the autofocus department. And while I do still believe that nobody should be updating their professional technology equipment on day one on a new update, that's still not an excuse for Fujifilm's baffling firmware decisions that just continue to make their own cameras objectively worse. And believe it or not, these bad updates seem to signal to a lot of professionals that Fujifilm actually didn't really care about their user base, leading a ton of photographers and videographers to straight up dump all of their Fuji equipment and move over to a new camera system entirely. And that really sucks because I really think that the recent hate that Fujifilm has gotten is pretty unwarranted, and a lot of people are missing out on the undeniable magic that is the Fujifilm camera experience. So what is that magic Fujifilm experience, and why am I still clinging onto my Fujifilm equipment despite the fact that I own and regularly use other and objectively better cameras? Reason number one, the image quality. It's no secret that Fuji's color science science is beloved by anyone who's experienced it, and the colors alone have convinced countless photographers to pick up some kind of Fujifilm camera over the years, even if they don't plan on using it for any professional purposes. The film simulations, both for baked-in looks in your JPEGs or used as a base profile in your RAWs and Lightroom, are super fun to mess around with, and my color style has really shifted overall since I started using Fujifilm cameras a few years ago. Now when I shoot on my Sony or Nikon cameras, I'm editing my colors to look much more like Fuji colors than anything else, which is a great opportunity to plug my presets super quick, so bear with me for a second because I do have my Fujifilm preset pack, presets that I handcrafted to kind of not emulate Fujifilm colors necessarily, but I would say inspired by Fujifilm colors, and it really helps me match my photos that are taken on non-Fujifilm cameras to the photos that I take on my Fujifilm cameras. In the Fujifilm preset pack, you'll find Fujifilm Chrome, Fujifilm Astia, Fujifilm Superior and Superior Light, Fujifilm Acros, and Fujifilm Simple, and you can use any of these presets on any camera, including iPhone photos if you want to, and they will get you from a really dull, flat-looking image to a very dynamic and punchy and vibrant-looking one. So if you want to grab those from my website, the link for that is in the description. You can also use the discount code that I put in the description to take $5 off, and for a grand total of $15 for 6 what I think are great presets. Alternatively, you can also just download the Fujifilm Chrome preset entirely for free. The link for that is in the description as well. Feel free to grab that, maybe test it out before you buy the full pack, or you can download it, use it, and then go on about your life and never worry about me ever again. Consider Fujifilm Chrome as my gift to you. Anyway, it's not just the colors in my X-T5 that contribute to the great image quality, it's also the undeniable and slightly unexplainable texture that my files always carry with them. This is something that I've noticed from every Fujifilm camera that I've used. It's not just the X-T5, that my photos are perfectly sharp and clear, but something about the way these X-Trans sensors in the Fujifilm cameras renders the texture of my photos is just something special. And even though I can pretty closely replicate Fuji colors on any other type of camera, it's that texture and that undeniable character from a real Fuji that's going to be something that I can only experience on that real Fuji. Reason number 2, small and lightweight. Most X-mount Fuji cameras, including this professional and fully loaded X-T5, are pretty small and lightweight, making them much easier to grab real quick and capture whatever fleeting moment is happening in front of me. I can carry this camera along with whatever lenses I want on my body all day and still feel pretty good, which isn't something I can say for one of my Sonys with like a big prime lens on it. I do have slightly bigger hands, specifically longer piano player fingers, I've been told, and I still find the smaller and more compact X-T5 to grip pretty easily. The lenses are also small and lightweight compared to their full frame counterparts, and I have some of the bigger primes in Fuji's lineup. With any of these 1.4 and 1.2 in the 56mm case lenses, I can keep them on my camera all day and still feel great. If you want to go even smaller and more compact, you could also get any of Fuji's older f2 lenses, which are still great, but smaller and with that smaller aperture as well. And if you want to go even smaller than that, you can get one of these tiny little manual focus lenses like this TT Artisan 35mm 1.4, which is a really fun experience. I actually need to make a whole video on this little lens because it is really great for what you get with it. Reason number 3, APS-C keeps me honest. Now this might sound a little weird, but crop sensor cameras kind of keep me honest. When you use a full frame camera, you obviously get all the advantages of that full frame camera, like better low light performance, stronger bokeh, inherently more crisp and detailed images. But over time and with more experience with the Fujifilm X system, I've found that those advantages in full frame are more often than not actually really big crutches for me, and they kind of actively make my photography a little bit worse. When I know I can completely blow out the background at 1.2 on full frame, or I can crank my ISO to crazy heights, I get lazy. I'll shoot without paying much attention to my lighting or background because full frame can just handle it all. But shooting like this and with that mindset makes my photography worse. Limitation breeds creativity, and the crop sensor of Fujifilm cameras is a perfect example of this. The X-T5 is fully outfitted with all of the latest mirrorless technology, so I'm not really wanting there in like the usability department. But the inherent qualities of a crop sensor camera force me to pay more attention to lighting, composition, and overall storytelling because I can't rely on that crazy bokeh or super high ISO capabilities like I can with a full frame. That being said, the high ISO on the X-T5 is very, very good, and I often crank it to like 12,800 if I have to, and I still get perfectly usable photos. Just a little aside there. Anyway, the slight limitations of APS-C compared to full frame just make me a better photographer. And finally, it's the little things. I have a few random things I like about my X-T5 in particular that don't fit into their own individual categories, so I'm just gonna call this category all the little things. I've come to really love the in-camera aspect ratio options available to me here, especially the 5x4 crop. Something about this look really makes me fall more in love with the results from this camera. Maybe it's because it feels more like a medium format aspect ratio, or that it draws me more into my subject and less reliant on my surroundings. It's also great because it only saves that setting for JPEGs. So when I load my raw photo shot into 5x4 into Lightroom, the crop is already automatically applied, but I can also take that crop away and get the full view from the full sensor if I want to revert back to that. I also love the way the buttons and dials feel. The shutter is kind of mushier, but still feels tactile. The dials have a great feel to them, and these two command dials specifically can also push in, meaning that you can map different settings to these as well, so everything's within easy reach. And then manual focusing on this camera, while admittedly not as good as it is on my Nikon ZF, is still really fun and easy. I especially love this display setting, which can be used in either the EVF or the back screen, where the big display is your full image with no focus peaking, so you can fully compose there and everything, but then there's a smaller view on the side where it's zoomed into your focus point with focus peaking. This has made it really easy to manually focus on my X-T5 with my manual or vintage lenses. It's just made the whole experience really fun and very easy. So the Fujifilm X-T5 is, on paper, worse than any other mirrorless camera I owned. And again, on paper, I should sell all of it and pare down my whole kit. But I just can't bring myself to do it, at least not right now. I love the photos I'm getting from this camera way too much to let go of it, and it's serving me very well. The only way I think I'd get rid of my Fuji X-mount equipment would be if I were to to sell all of it and then buy a Fujifilm GFX camera, which I will never say is outside the realm of possibility. In fact, I'm actually renting a GFX 50S2 for a wedding at the end of this month to see how it does in a wedding situation. I'm going to put my vintage Zeiss lenses on it and see how that whole experience feels, and then make a video going over that experience. So if you want to watch that when it comes out in a few weeks, please feel free to subscribe. But what do you think about Fujifilm cameras right now? Are you a diehard fan like I am? Maybe you shoot other camera systems too, but you have a cheap Fuji on the side for fun, or maybe you're fully bought into the system and you use it for all of your shooting. Regardless, I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this, so please feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments section below, as I do my best to read and reply to all of them. And if you want to support me even further, you can check out my presets on my website. That link again is in the description, or you can just like this video and move on about your day. I appreciate you watching regardless. But if you don't want to do any of that, that's totally fine, because I will see you in the algorithm in 6 months.